let's see, Councilor Lewis and Councilor Sanchez, who wants to go on R236?
Thank you, Mr. President. R11236, it's appropriating and adjusting funds for operating the government of the City of Albuquerque for fiscal year 2012. And, Councilors, this bill appropriates $604,000 in one-time money to fund 15 firefighter positions for the later half of FY12. The sources from savings from the citizens, from the city's negotiation of a fuel hedge fund. The bill was introduced in June. We deferred it, actually at the request of the administration, till after our July break. And then our last meeting, it came at the end of a long meeting, and it's held over till this meeting. And so I move approval.
There's been a motion second of approval of R236. We have one person signed up to speak, and then we'll get on to discussion of the bill and perhaps some amendments or something else. Mr. Robert White.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. I believe I should have been speaking to R237 because I do not have I signed up wrong. I do not have a problem with R236, and I can either sit down or make my bit now.
You want to talk about it while you're here? I'm joking. I'm talking about this. No. No, I'm just going to give you the opportunity to talk about 236. But no, that's okay. We'll call you back up for 237.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. Zaman, if you would like to talk, because I know that there was questions about the fuel hedge fund, the negotiations, and the reasons why we deferred this, because obviously we wanted to see that the money would be there. And in fact, after the negotiations with the hedge fund, the money is there. But questions over it being recurring, non-recurring, and how this matches up. If you can comment on that, please.
Mr. President, Councilor Lewis, I'd be glad to. As you said, we wanted to be very cautious and make sure that the savings from the proposed fuel hedge actually materialized. As it turned out, they did. We were able to lock in a budget price well underneath the $3.25 per gallon that was included in the FY12 budget. As a matter of fact, we saved what we believe to be $580,000 in recurring revenue. There have been some questions about whether or not utilizing those savings for recurring expenditures in some way harms the budget structure of the city. And what Mr. Romero just did is passed out a paper that shows that, and there's more detail on the back, that shows that after this appropriation, the recurring to recurring balance of the city is unaffected. It's still $1,546,000. The non-recurring balance for one-time supplies is reduced by $22,000, but we have fund balance to accommodate that. And the overall available fund balance is not reduced to a negative level. It's reduced from $79,000 to $56,000.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Zaman. Councilor Lewis and Councilor Sanchez.
And if the chief would like to come on up, I'd like to invite Chief Breen to come and speak on this. And Chief, we spoke, I guess, in past council meetings. Certainly have many conversations about the need, and you've expressed the need for this kind of appropriation. And so, but also I know the timing. I know we discussed earlier today the timing of this and the ability to be able to hire or to to keep the 15 firefighter positions, and when we would bring on new staff. And you're saying that we could possibly do that in February if we were to go ahead and appropriate these dollars now. And again, this is specifically for the second part of the FY11, so it starts in January, even though we might not be able to do a class until February. We're still it's still a large part of the 6 months that this bill originally was appropriated for. So if you can comment on that.
Mr. President, Councilor Lewis, members of the council, basically the opportunity to hire those 15 positions, that appropriation had to occur at the end of the last council meeting. That ship sailed. We hired a cadet class. They went through pre-employment screening over the last couple of weeks. The cadet class started today, and so the opportunity to hire those individuals has passed. The number of people that we hire is based on a retirement survey and attrition throughout the department. And we estimated that if this appropriation had been made, we would have hired 35 people. As such, the appropriation was not made, so we hired 15 less. We hired 20 people as of today.
And Chief, if the appropriation is made tonight, you could have that class at the earliest in February, right?
The earliest opportunity to train another set of firefighters would be mid-February. They would graduate at the end of June. They'd be available for manpower after the beginning of the next fiscal year, FY13.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, I'm very concerned by your statement that the ship has left, and this is already too late to do. We should have done it at the last meeting. This has been on the agenda since June. I mean, you are the chief of the Albuquerque Fire Department. This was an important issue to you based on a memo that you put out on May 23rd of 2011 to the firefighters, and we received a copy of this, that there was a gap in services on Albuquerque's west side, especially with the lack of a ladder truck, and that's what Councilor Lewis and I were working on, and that's why we had this agenda item prepared, ready to go. Time was not in our favor, but had this been as important to me as it is to Councilor Lewis and this entire council, why is it that we were never notified that we needed to hear this at the last meeting? And now you're telling us at the 11th hour that it can't be done?
Well, the class started, and based on when we need these firefighters in service available for manpower, that had to happen. August 2nd. I believe the labor union, ourselves, the council, I think everybody knew that this was a priority. We thought it was on the agenda for the last two council meetings. We thought it was going to be heard. We were disappointed that it wasn't. And the council meeting ended that night without it being heard. We were equally disappointed.
Why did you not pick up the phone and let me know before the meeting that this had to be heard? I mean, there's been times when there's agenda items that come up that need to be heard before the end of the night, and we could have suspended the rules and once again extended the meeting.
We were under the understanding it would be heard.
And we didn't know of this deadline. We were never notified of this deadline that the class is going to start. And I concur with Councilor Lewis. I mean, we need to get the class underway. You're the one that put out this memo stating that there was a gap in services, and I don't think it's fair to the residents on Albuquerque's west side that have waited for over 10 years to get this ladder apparatus for the district. And this is an issue of public safety, Chief, and it needs to be addressed. And for us not to be notified that it was, the time had elapsed is very troublesome to me, especially with the importance of this issue.
And I share your concerns. It should have been heard.
A couple things. I think Mr. Perry wants to address the council, then Councilor Gardenia, then
Mr. President, Councilor Sanchez, as we all know, it has been on the agenda, and the agenda's been pretty crowded the last couple of meetings, going to past midnight, to my recollection. We were under the impression that this bill would be heard at one point or another during that hearing. And I think the Chief made it fairly clear to everybody that these were priority bills and that they needed to be heard. And they weren't heard. And I'm not blaming anybody or casting any fault, but I don't think it's fair to cast fault on the Chief for that either. As it relates to the point about the need for ladder coverage out on the west side, we all recognize that. The administration, Mayor Barry, Chief Breen, have put together a plan. The council has approved a capital expenditure to buy a ladder truck and to build a station out for Station 7. And we have a plan to do that. Of course, we also have Station 2 in the southeast as well. And we're trying to put these plans in place where we bring the manpower in at the right time to purchase the apparatus, the ladder truck, as well as have the station complete. We think that we can do that. Sure, there has been a gap in service out on the west side, but we do have a plan. We've worked with council, explained with council as to what the plan is, the timing and temporal aspects of the plan, and we think we will be providing ladder coverage with appropriate apparatus, appropriate station, appropriate staffing, with the approvals of the voters in the capital budget.
Mr. Perry, this is not a game of political chess. This is an issue of public safety for the residents in Albuquerque. And I'm just really concerned that, this was not brought up and discussed. If it was that important to the administration, I mean, you were sitting here at those meetings that went on until 12 o'clock at night.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you should have brought that recommendation that we need to vote on this tonight and not defer any of the other items. I mean, I didn't realize that it was that important that it needed to get done on that specific date to be assured that we were going to get the ladder apparatus on Albuquerque's west side.
Thank you, Mr. Perry, and Councilor Sanchez. Councilor Garduño, followed by Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I still am somewhat dismayed that we continue talking about, and I agree with you, Councilor Sanchez, that it's starting to look like a bad, it's maybe more like checkers, where people are trying to step in front of each other. There's a need for a ladder, on the west side. That should be paramount. That should be what we should be doing, and never mind all the other reasons why we can't do it. Whether it's because we didn't act appropriately in time or any of those things, whatever it is we need to do as a body, let's do it to make sure that that coverage is taken care of. And that's to help the residents and also to help the fire department to be able to do the work that they have to do. So whatever it is we need to do, and I don't know that for a fact, but I'm looking for guidance from staff or the rest of the councilors, what is it we need to do? And I'm willing to support that.
Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just wanted to, I guess, not to go back and just not passing blame here, but I just wanted to, I guess, to clarify. And Chief, in one of your, this was back in May, and you stated that part of the fire department plan was to relocate Engine 29 to the west side and redesignate the engine as Ladder 17 until Fire Station 7 was completed, at which time it would become Ladder 7. And so we're not just talking about waiting a year and a half until Ladder 7 is I mean, it was clearly, and you stated clearly that the plan for these resources was to go directly to 17, redesignate an engine truck to a ladder capabilities. And in that communication was that there was a clear gap in that area. And so this is really simple. This is what's happened, and that is that when that is communicated to counselors in a district, then a counselor does what a counselor does. A counselor is going to appropriate dollars and look for ways that we can fund that. And that's what this bill is. This bill is simply that. We were asked to defer the bill until afterwards. It's unfortunate that at that last meeting that it was not communicated. I mean, we're talking about positions funding in January. And so I think in our minds, we had until maybe October, November, to be able to get this done. And so it was really shocking. It was shocking to me today that we would have this kind of delay, and that there would even be the suggestion that this would go into other capital, to other stations here. And so I really don't know what the recommendation would be, other than the fact that if we can go ahead and just pass this resolution, and be able to plan for the class as soon as possible, to be able to fund these positions, to be able to put these resources specifically at Station 17, which was clearly intended that it wasn't to wait until the end of 2012. It was specifically to move these resources to 17, and along with not only the engine truck, ladder capabilities, but also the firefighters. So, I'm open to some suggestions here, but I would like to recommend that we go ahead and pass this, and that we we move as quickly as possible to move these resources in the way they were intended.
And thanks. And I have a question about